In the 1430s, the people of Rouen faced an ambitious challenge to raise a cathedral tower using nothing but human hands, timber frames, and the knowledge passed down through generations. This wasn't just engineering, it was a test of patience, precision, and faith. If you enjoy exploring how history's great works were built, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment with where you're watching from and the time of day. We'd love to know who's here with us as we step onto the scaffolding together. Now imagine standing in that churchyard as the city quiets around you, the scaffolding beneath your palms, and the weight of the tower still to come above you. Your palms test the oak scaffolding as the churchyard hush folds back. Grain ridges press your skin, pegs bite through mortises, the frame holds. Above the nave, a square of sky waits where the tower will rise. You breathe slow and taste lime on your tongue. The chapter has set a date before the feast. Your goal is simple to say and heavy to bear. Raise the tower by hand. Keep the crew paid and whole. Keep your standing with the canons, who watch everything and sign the wages. The hoarding boards lean over the transept like short wings. Their joints show last season's rain, silver in narrow cracks. You move along them, counting stanchions, eyeing lashings, checking every place a foot will trust. A treadwheel frame will stand here. 2 men will walk its cage, others will mind the tail rope. Everyone will hear each other or the job stops. It is a city of hands above a city of roofs. Wind from the river slips along the nave and rattles a loose batten. The smell carries salt and smoke from hearths across the square. Rouen murmurs below. Carts pitch over ruts. A brazier crackles near the west door where the mortar man warms his mix. You flex your shoulders and try a rung with one foot, then both. It gives the right small amount and no more. A quiet certainty settles. The wheel must stand on the north frame. The south run keeps sun longer, but the north bracing is better. You picture the first lifts. You picture the swing of a block over air and the silent breath through the yard. Your fingers draw the shape in dust on a board. A boy watches and memorizes. Masons here take order and wage from the cathedral chapter. They keep a lodge by the north door. They dress stone where light is steady. Work rises by courses, marked and measured, and nothing moves without a hoist and a trusted line. The feast day presses the schedule, but custom binds the pay and the pace. A messenger climbs to you with a folded order sealed in soot-dark wax. He says the canons want a clear path kept through the close. They want the wheel struck by evening on festival days. You nod and press the paper flat with a mallet head. A blunted pen scores the episcopal register's edge near the wages line. You touch the wax, then tuck the order into your chest rail and turn to the frame. At the chapter step, canons quietly claim the lime gauge once measured tardy crews by the grit left on shoes. Press your boot to the chapter step and feel the faint chalk scars. You smile and leave the stair clear. Crewmen are superstitious about small things. If the step remembers chalk, no one scuffs it bare today. Your thumb finds the notch you cut yesterday to mark Plumb. The mark sits true over a mortise hole. You sight along it and picture a line rising through air. Every lift will answer to that mark. The hoist will follow the mark. Your name will live or die on that mark. You call for 2 ledgers to brace the wheel uprights. The apprentices bring them, shoulders straining, noses white with dust. The treadwheel's drum waits on the ground below, bands tightened, spokes trued. Your foreman checks the axle. He knocks iron pins into their keepers with a wooden mallet and listens for a clean ring. You eye the hoist beam. Its end extends past the wall by a hand and a half. Enough for a good swing and no more. You set a cramp across the beam and test the crush with a wedge. It holds. A bell rings at evening from the far church downriver, and you count the beats without thinking. On your frame, the only count that matters is men and stones. You tally both with chalk on an off-cut board. Names, marks, courses. The first ashlar for this stage lies close to the north wall, already sided and squared. The bedding face shows fine comb marks. Your fingers skate the arras and feel no crumble. This block will fly well. The crew gathers at the wheel as you gesture the steps. Slow climb, even beats. No chatter in the cage. Hands on the tail rope mind the rise and the set. If a gust hits, you call halt. The wheelmen freeze and lean, the rest put weight into the fall line. Your voice will carry. You point out signals. Arm high means raise. Arm low means ease. Flat palm means stop. It is simple in words until the block floats. A refectory cook peers out the vestry door. Flour on her cheek. She laughs to see men in the wheel and says they look like mice in a cheese. You grin and touch the edge of your cap. The boy by the ledger smiles too wide and trips on a brace. You catch his sleeve. No one falls today, you say, and your voice is easy. Kneeling by the bedding course, you drag a finger through lime to feel the grit. It wants a little more sand. You tell the mortar man to adjust the gauge. He nods and tips a scoop. The mix takes air and turns a softer white. You'll butter the bed just before the first lift. Not yet. Let the frame stiffen. Let your mind lay out the next hour. A light mood edges the crew as they gather. A journeyman hums a far tune. An apprentice stares at the wheel and whispers a quick prayer, one he learned at home. You say nothing. Your hands work. You cut a small rebate in a ledger to seat a pin deeper. Chips jump. The wood tastes sappy and old at once. This frame has seen other jobs and bears their marks like a ledger bears lines. A small, plain thought runs through the lodge below. They keep patterns for tracery under a lean-to roof. They store iron cramps in a chest near the vestry door. They sharpen chisels on a slab beside the pump. The lodge masters teach boys to mark stone with a system of signs so pieces find their places in height. You descend to ground level and walk the path from wheel to hoist beam. Your boots plant in a steady cadence. The fall line will run clear of the stair. The sweep will pass over a patch of open yard. A brazier waits by the wall with coals humming. You stand by it for a moment and feel heat on your shins. The day will climb. So will you. A canon in a black cloak steps near and asks how long the first course will need. You keep your words even, before noon, if the wind stays easy. He nods once. He glances at the north aisle where townsfolk drift and stare. He wants a safe yard and a quiet yard. You want a yard where the wheel sings and does not bite anyone. The wooden mallet sits balanced in both hands as you test its weight. The head is beech. The handle sits smooth and firm. This is the sound that sets men moving. You set it down by the bedding course, where it will be ready, and raise your chin at the wheel. By mid-morning, the mallet's thud levels into a steady beat. The plumb bob steadies as the mallet's beat runs on below. Its cord twirls once, unwinds, and the metal cone kisses the board with a faint tick. You sight the mark you cut yesterday and feel a small chill along your knuckles. The line says true as a rule. The wall edge whispers otherwise. Your fingers nudge the cord and set a slow swing. The bob draws a narrow bell in the air and returns to centre. You slide a straight edge along the ashlar arris and see the shy lean. It is no more than a barleycorn at this height, but barleycorns grow wicked when they stack. You call for a laddered stage and have the boy bring pins and a scriber. Wind from the river slides across the hoarding and lifts grit from the bed. The line trembles and settles. Rouen's roofs break the draught in patches, so eddies visit and leave. You hold the cord steady with the flat of a finger and watch the point hover. The bob does not lie. It sings a soft truth against the board. You think of the last season's course and the day the wheel jammed. A pause, a rush, a stone that landed right but pressed harder on one edge than the other. You imagine the squeeze, the thin bed on the north, the fat bed on the south. Your jaw sets. The correction must happen before the first lift. No wheel turns until the rule is met. They measure a tower by tools that do not flatter. The plumb shows vertical. A straight edge finds flat. A level board reads the bed. Masters order corrections in place when they can and take down work only when the fault exceeds the allowed drift. When winds rise and lash scaffolds, entries thicken in the consistory act book about repairs to hoists and braces. You rub the page-edge grit from memory off your thumb and return to the stone. Your palm taps the ashlar's face and feels a hollow note. The bedding is sound. yet the joint below likely bears heavy on one side. You kneel and scrape a thin film of lime with your trowel, just to see the surface shine. A fine comb mark appears, honest and square. The error lies in the course beneath. Masons quietly claim the Plumb judges more sternly than any canon when chalk and mortar meet. Lift the stall latch and pass the Plumb to the boy. He grips the bob like a reliquary and keeps his breath shallow, as taught. You lower yourself to the next course and test again. The line agrees with your eye. The north arises, creep a hair outward. You choose the cleaner of 2 panes, shave the bed on the north, ease the south with a full butter, and ask patience from the crew while the set takes. No one loves delay. Everyone loves a wall that does not quarrel later. A journeyman fetches the iron chisel and light hammer. You mark a taper with chalk, narrow as a fingernail at one end, nothing at the other. Your wrist finds the rhythm. Short, firm taps. A slaty rind lifts from the bed. Dust gathers in the shade of your boot. You pause every few blows and feel the surface. It turns from rasp to silk. The plane is quiet under your palm. You wash the bed with a damp brush and flick the grit away. The boy lowers the Plumb and you lay the board again. Better, not perfect. You take 3 more shaving cuts. Each falls thinner than a hymn page. The bob centers dead over your notch. You allow yourself one slow breath. The foreman brings a bag of small oak slips. He holds one up, thin as a tongue. You shake your head. Not today. No wedge unless the wind insists. Timber leaves ghosts in stone. You would rather trust lime in a true bed. He shrugs and tucks the bag under a ledger. A canon appears at the chapter step and watches your hand, but says nothing. You keep the cord steady and let the stillness teach him how patience looks. He frowns at the pause, then at the wheel, and then at the boys who hold themselves still like cats. You move your straight edge a hair. The edge kisses the arras all along. That is the answer. You call the mortar man and tell him the south beds want a little more body. He nods and turns his gauge scoop with a practiced motion. The mix opens and turns a gentle ivory. You smear a small test on the trial board and press a scrap stone to see the spread. It holds a clean quiver and releases with a flat pull. Good. A small, plain system holds across the lodge. Marks on stones pair with marks on plans. Plumbs check vertical every 3rd course. Straight edges travel with the bedding party. Wheelmen and tailmen follow fixed gestures so noise stays low. If a lean appears, the master sets correction and notes the cause in the lodge book without scold if the remedy proves sound. You climb back up and put the Plumb where the first ashlar will land in the new lift. The cord grazes the bed edge, the metal point just kissing air. Light from a high opening makes the line glow like a hair on water. You blink the shine away and trust the tick against wood. The wheelmen step back into their cage and put feet to rungs. You hold up a flat palm and they wait. The tail rope team grins and then sobers. The refectory cook has returned, and now she keeps her mouth shut, reading the room. The foreman clears his throat but does not speak. The silence is good. Men work better when tools talk. Your jaw loosens as you talk the plan through once more. First lift to the north side, slow swing, then a set so the weight kisses, not slams. The tail rope will feed and check. The wheel will answer your arm. The bed will feel how you think. Even a tower likes a gentle hand. A runner from the yard appears with a small note pinched in 2 fingers. You accept and unfold it with a dusty thumb. It is nothing more than a tally of sand delivered and lime drawn. You slide it into the chest rail by habit. Paper counts later. Stone and line count now. The bob hangs at calm. You press the arras with 2 fingertips and run the straight edge again. No light shows. A smile warms the corners of your mouth. The boy grins back, then schools his face. He knows not to grin too early. He'll be good. A cloud pulls sun aside, and the hoarding breathes a cooler draught. The cord does not care. It has the serenity of a nail in heaven, a joke one old mason liked to whistle. You pretend not to remember and keep your face steady. The crew likes you more when laughter comes late and short. You step down and draw a thin chalk mark where the tailmen must stand to keep clear. Arrows point and a small handprint appears where the boy tested the chalk. You let it stay. He will see it after the lift and feel taller. You whisper a quick reminder about fingers near the fall line. He nods. The straight edge rests against your shin as you turn to the bedding. You ready your trowel and, with a small twist of your wrist, lay a cushion that thickens toward the south as planned. The surface ripples and then smooths to a matte plane. The plan is simple now. The Plumb asks for truth. You answer with lime and will. A thin tang rises from the lime mortar and lingers at the bed. The chalk line snaps across the bed and dusts the lime mortar with a pale thread. It leaves a straight whisper from arris to arris. You draw again to mark the squeeze room, a thumb's breadth clear of the edge. The board under your knee warms in the thin sun. Grit lifts and settles. Light from the high windows falls in bands over the lodge bench. Templates lean there like sails in a rack. Boards carry curves for tracery and for stair treads, each one labelled in a hand you know at a glance. From the nave, a hollow murmur drifts from visitors who pretend not to stare. You brace your forearm and pull the chalk line tight. Your other hand cues the boy to lift and let drop. The cord sings and spits a small cloud, the mark crisp and even. He grins at the clean stripe and tries not to cough. Your smile answers and then goes flat for the next mark. A simple thought repeats itself. Margins keep peace later. Where stone meets stone, a measured mercy saves temper and pay. You set the scriber's metal point into wood and draw a light rail down a ledger face, just to teach his eye what parallel means without saying the word. The pattern board for the stair newel waits against the wall. Its pine smells faint and clean where the knife cut it yesterday. You run a finger along the arris of the curve and feel the tiny scallops left by the blade. This board will travel up and down the scaffold for weeks. It will tell blocks far apart to agree. From the yard, the treadwheel creaks while men test the cage. A quick exchange of gestures clears the tail line from a brace. You raise a palm and the wheel stops. The chalking must finish before the first lift today. Everyone sees that in the set of your shoulders. A square of slate sits on the bench with figures scratched into it. Course numbers, stone counts. One symbol marks half blocks with a triangle. The boy taps it and you nod. He will copy the slate onto the tally board near the beam. The marks feel like a prayer said under one's breath. They keep a short system here for patterns and marks. Boards hold curves for repeated stones. Each course number matches paint on the ashlar faces. Wheelmen know where to set the lift from 2 marks and 1 arm sign. When confusion grows, entries appear in chapter minutes about lost templates and muddled counts. You read those quiet lines as warnings written in a dry hand. A dull nib drags across the chapter minutes where they list new template boards by size and use. The notice sits between notes on stone carriage and payments for iron cramps. You heft the chalk reel and set another snap along the bed. The plumb bob hangs nearby, where you left it. Its point nods but does not wander. You measure a cross distance with the rule. It matches yesterday's mark within a hair. Your jaw relaxes. A journeyman brings the story pole. He holds it as if it were a spear. Your forefinger runs along the pole's nicks and numbers. Each cut stands for a course set from the aisle paving as base. The boy watches you compare pole to wall and sees the small agreement. The tiny lift in his chin tells you he understands the dance. Rouen speaks from below in cart knocks and bargemen's calls. Air moves up the nave and presses your sleeves. The lime's tang sours and then clears. You draw a little rectangle near the bed edge to show where butter will stop. You tell the boy the line is not a wall. It is a suggestion to the hand. He fetches the numbering brush and a pot of thin paint. You show him how to write a tidy 3 on the bedding face of an ashlar. The numeral sits dark for a moment, then soaks in and dulls. He repeats the hand on the next stone. The marks will keep friends together when height separates them. A short laugh escapes a wheelman who sees the boy's careful strokes. You let it pass. Pride in small marks turns to pride in strong courses. You have seen walls fail from mockery faster than from rain. Mockery makes hands sloppy. Rain simply asks you to work around it. On the bench, the template for a window jamb stacks with 2 cousins. Each bears a notch where the spindle will later fit. You tick those notches with chalk so the cutting party will not miss them in the rush. Your palm picks up white and leaves it on your tunic. The cloth keeps its stains like a memory of earlier jobs. Stone speaks when marks meet skill. A mended arras will tell you about yesterday's hidden chip. Fine combing on a bed says the dressing party had a good morning. A faint saw score warns you that a face wants one more light polisher pass. You slide your nail across one bed and it purrs like a cat against wood. That earns a little nod. 2 apprentices carry in a chest with leather straps and set it under the bench. Inside, pattern nails lie in a tangle, bright where iron shows through rubbed oil. You choose 6 and press them through a new board to fix a small curve for the stair soffit. The hammer's taps make a neat row of heads flush with grain. You pause by the story pole and mark a small star next to the course that will meet the bell frame later. That star will remind the crew to leave a chase for iron. Memory helps, marks make memory public. It saves arguments at height where air steals words. A priest in passing sees the templates and asks if the curves are ornaments or necessities. You say both, but mostly necessities, and let your mouth soften. He nods and moves on, satisfied that geometry is also a kind of devotion. Your foreman sidles near and pretends he did not hear. He likes when words do not turn to riddles. From the bench, the scribe's board shows a faint grid drawn in charcoal. The boy asks why the squares tilt. You explain that the grid will stand straight when the board leans at the angle of the stair. His eyes widen at the trick of it. You tap the edge and call it simply useful. Dust motes float where light cuts through a gap in the hoarding. The line on the bed reads like a road seen from a hill. You teach the boy to check with the pad of a finger, not the tip. The pad feels high spots and ridges better. He tries, and his mouth opens a little when he feels the bed turn truly flat under skin. You carry the chalk reel to the hoist beam and hang it from a strap ring. The tool swings and slows, patient as a pendulum. The foreman holds up the story pole again and calls a number. You answer with the same number and tap the bed where the first stone will sit. The number passes through the crew like a coin hand to hand. A soft dryness coats your tongue from the chalk. You sip water from the skin and rub a bit of dust from your wrist. The habit of checking edges never leaves. Even when you speak, your other hand finds a stone and traces it like one might trace the grain of a table at supper. A lift of air slides over the board and tries to move the light template at your feet. You set a stone chip on its corner to hold it. The boy copies the move without being told for the board near him. You do not praise it. You will remember it later when he stumbles, and the memory will even things out. From the choir rail, 2 canons watch the marks collect and confer in low voices. They will not see the virtue of these lines until the height swallows the floor and only the wheel knows how pieces find each other. That does not trouble you. The marks trouble you if they are sloppy, not if they are misunderstood. You clap dust from your hands and kneel to check the first bed one last time. The chalk stripe holds fine at both ends. The margin sits clean and true. You point to the tally board. The boy sets the numeral with care. The lift can begin when the wheelmen step. You steady the ashlar block and feel its edge cool under your hand. The treadwheel crane creaks as the ashlar noses into the sling and steadies. Slats hum under the wheelman steps. The cage answers in a slow rise and fall. You touch the becket, then the stone, and feel the faint thrum pass through both. A pin clicks home at the hoist head. The block sits ready for a dry run. Nothing more. Yet palms shine as if a storm were brewing. Your hands check the axle bands and the iron dogs on the post. Knuckles rap the oak to hear for hollows. The wheelwright's wedges still hold. You lean your shoulder into the uprights and feel a tiny give that belongs there and nowhere else. A breath goes out that you did not know you kept. Wind slips across the hoarding and skates sawdust along the ledges. Grain in the timbers drinks a thin warmth from the steady sun. Far below, Rouen grumbles at a cart stuck in a rut near the gate. The sound fades. The yard returns to the small talk of tools. A rule repeats itself, lines must not cross where eyes cannot see. You keep that in your mouth like a bead to worry. Tail rope to the clear side, fall line free from braces, no snag at the sheave. You point, and men shift without words. The head block sways a finger's breadth. Your foreman raises a brow. You nod and give the order with your palm, ease the drum, slow the walk. The wheelmen let their feet find a gentler rhythm. The block centres itself over the bed and stills. That was a good catch. Nothing more. The sheaves wait for a rope like a throat waits for a drink. You bring the free end up, work it through the head, then down through the hook block, and up again. Your thumb keeps the lay smooth as it passes. The hemp bites your skin in a friendly way, rough and honest. The boy minds the coil and feeds without loops jumping. They rig the wheel by settled habit. A head block hangs from the beam, the hook block greets the load, lines run to the drum. Chapter minutes record payment for new wheel bands after a cracked rim last winter. Point along the chapter step and chalk a short line. The rope is hemp, spliced in the guild hall, and crews judge edgeware by touch and by smell when rain swells the fibres. You lower your face to the sheave and check the pin. A light smear of tallow keeps the turn soft. You wipe a bit of grit from the groove with the side of your hand. The boy watches how you avoid the edges. He sees you set the split pin back through with 2 easy taps. He does not know yet that ease comes from old bruises. A wheelman in the cage flicks his eyes at the tail rope. You answer with 2 fingers down. He leans his weight backward and the drum pays an inch. The ashlar hums. The leather sling shifts and nips. You listen for a bad scrape and hear none. The sound of a good lift is an old friend who speaks low. Your throat finds a dry place and you swallow. You call for the dry run and count the beats without raising your voice. 4 up, 2 hold, 4 down, no one laughs. The cage begins to rotate, steps thudding in even pairs. The line runs smooth through the sheaves and comes back to the drum like a river taught to make a turn. A stone chip flicks off the bed when the sling tightens. You brush it clear with the side of your hand. The ashlar floats a thumb high, then settles back with a kiss. Hands on the tail, check and feed. The wheelmen keep their eyes on the horizon, as trained. A lift is steadier when no one stares at his own feet. A small grin wants to live in your cheek and you let it die there. Work that starts with smiles ends with splinters. You nod instead and point to the beam end where the fall line wants to drag. The foreman sets a turning block and straps it tight around the rail. The rope takes the new course without complaint. From the choir rail, 2 cannons lean and murmur. Their mouths shape numbers, you know. They think this is the lift, not the rehearsal. Your palm stays flat. You clap once, the wheel halts, nobody moves. A beat later, you raise your hand and the steps resume. Slower this time, just enough to train the tail men to feel a drag at the turning block. A journeyman brings a short iron bar and slides it through the drum spokes. He keeps it ready as a brake for the test. You mark his stance with a brief nod. The bar will not fly if his feet hold square. He glances once at your forearm, where scars mark a lesson from years ago. His grip tightens. A thought taps at you. Weight invites care, not fuss. You speak only in signs and keep the air clean of words. The boy's eyes drink every motion. He will teach them later with your same hands. This is how craft climbs past mouths and lives in bodies. A tailman's heel skids on a dusting of sand. You lift your chin and point to his stance. He shifts, finds a new purchase, and the line stays taut. He looks at you and you give the small nod that means the slip is forgiven. The ashlar does not know about pride or shame. It knows only press and bed. You step to the hook and touch the shackle. Your nail tests the pin. The leather sling creaks once and quiets. The becket sits flat against the stone's corner pad. All the small places speak their short words and fall silent again. That silence is the best sound in the yard. A woman from the kitchens arrives with a bucket and sets it by the brazier. Steam curls from it. She tips her chin toward the wheelmen and says they may drink after the run. You raise 2 fingers for thanks and keep your body still. The cage climbs and descends 2 more times, with a slow grace that would look comic if it were not so serious. You listen for the sheave's song. The pin sings in a narrow key. The wheel answers in a bass that holds steady. A good rig becomes a choir when nothing strains alone. A lark flashes past the gap in the hoarding and startles the boy. He grins, then remembers and schools his face again. When crews are fresh, masters press rehearsal lifts. They stop jams before they grow teeth. Dry runs teach every hand the cadence without cost. They spare the lodge the bad line in their count when an error could have been caught by touch. The rest of the day will hate you a little for this caution and love you much later. You wave the brakeman to set the bar. He slips it through and leans his weight. The drum eases, the ashlar settles. The sling slackens with a soft sigh that stirs the dust. You step in, raise the hook, and let the stone kiss the bed once more. No bite, no skid, only promise. The boy looks at your face for a verdict. He blinks slow, then touches your chin toward the wheel. He understands and clears the line from the turning block. The journeyman unstraps the block and hangs it on a peg. Tools return to their places. You feel a small heat bloom in your chest. The rig is ready to earn. You draw your knuckles along the fall line and then wipe them on your tunic. Grit leaves a pale streak on cloth. The rope lies true, coils square, drums neat. The wheel sighs as the cage empties. Men stretch calves and rub palms with a clean rag. You keep your own hand still. By late morning, the dry run stands clean. A raw hemp smell rises from the tail line. Your wrist circles lime mortar with the trowel until steam lifts. The paste opens as water meets burned stone. A hiss rises, sharp as a breath between teeth. You draw the blade through the mix and watch it ripple, then settle. Marks on the trial board shine and blur. The bed wants a gentle cushion, not a flood. The sieve shivers as sand rains into the tub. Grains drum against its mesh and build a pale cone. A boy shakes in small arcs, shoulder tight, jaw set. You tap the rim. He eases the motion and lets the dust fall slow. Fines will fatten the spread. Too coarse and beds bruise. Warm air from the brazier drifts along the wall and softens breath. Coals glow like fruit under ash. A nearby bucket sweats on its sides and licks a thin runnel down its stave. You tip a little water into the trough and watch heat writhe out in a milky plume. The hiss climbs and eases. A simple thought clicks in place, slakes slow, or joints complain. You keep that near your tongue to quiet haste. The drum on the wheel could sing all day and it would not matter if the bed lied. You point to the gauge scoop and the foreman nods, then fills it level. The trough rim warms under your palm when you lean for a look. Slaked paste gathers in a corner, creamy and calm. You lift a trowel of it and let it fall in a ribbon. It folds onto itself without breaking. Good. A shovel of sand follows. You turn the blade as if folding dough and cut again. The whiff from the mix has that clean bite you trust. They keep mortar practice as a small creed. Lime burns, then drinks, then rests. Sand tempers the fatness and keeps the bed honest. Beds stay thin where loads press. When the slate runs hot, the chapter minutes record scalded wrists and shortened shifts. You turn away from the trough and call for a brief set before buttering begins. A chip scrap of slate carries numbers scratched by the boy. 1 mark stands for the sand lifts in each batch. You wipe your knuckle across the slate and the dust smears. He blinks, rewrites the tally, and looks happier when the numbers stand straight. You say nothing. His pride stays where it belongs, tucked inside the work. The hod carrier brings a board with a low wall around its edge. He sets it near the bed so the paste does not travel where feet belong. Your trowel scoops a ribbon and lays it in a steady tongue along the chalk. The sound changes when thickness turns right. Thin sings with a rasp. Right thickness hums. At the sieve, sand trickles in a narrow fall. The boy sneezes once, then grins at his own care to turn away first. You flick 2 fingers to praise without fuss. The foreman folds the mix and tests a small dollop against a scrap stone. He lifts it and watches the belly sag just a little. He nods. The sag tells you joints will close without begging. At the choir rail, mixers say a low lamp keeps wicks calm when the air runs dry. Set the choir rail and chalk a short line. The wood holds steady, not biting hot, and the hiss has settled to a friendly mutter. You crouch by the bed and butter a wide ribbon toward the south, just as the earlier correction asked. The trowel rides low. Its back leaves faint tracks like fish bones. A second pass blurs them. Your palm finds the surface and feels it level under skin. You stop a thumb's breadth from the aris, as taught. A boy reaches for a second scoop too soon. You tap his wrist with a handle. Not yet. He rocks back on his heels and watches. The habit of restraint is its own tool. You will learn it by hunger now and by comfort later, when joints sleep tight and do not whisper at night. Rouen murmurs below with wheel rumble and barge calls. From the nave, a pilgrim's cough scratches at the air and fades. The mortar's smell pushes it away. You rake the bed once more and feel grit turn silent. Silence under a blade is the best answer. A small brush waits in your belt. You draw it out and whisk the chalk line to make room for paste. Chalk dust rises and twirls toward the coals. You set the brush behind your ear without looking. The motion belongs to the day as surely as the wheels beat. Hands move by the trough in a steady hourglass rhythm. Water tips, sand falls, lime folds back. A hod bumps your hip and you steady it without turning. The carrier mutters a thanks and steps clear. You cut another tongue of mortar and lay it square. It spreads and stays, not slumping, not peaking. Across the yard, the drum waits for the call. Quiet now. Even so, a man in the cage stretches calves and shakes arms to keep warmth. He looks toward you, but not for your eyes. He looks at your hands, where decisions speak more plainly than your mouth. You keep those hands slow. You test a little against a spare ashlar to check peel. The contact makes that soft kiss, you know. You rotate your wrist and the scrap lets go with a clean parting. You think of how a good bed remembers where it met a face and welcomes it again at height, in a brief, plain way. Workers here teach by touch. A palm reads thickness. A wrist learns the weight of a right scoop. A thumb senses the break in a bed that is too stiff. Records do not teach this, though the Consistory Act book sometimes lists payments to widows after a fall. You place a hand flat on the board and hold it there, because hands must remember. Wind pushes through a gap in the hoarding and folds a corner of your tunic. The coals answer with a bright breath. A little steam snakes from the trough and writes nothing in the air. You tip the bucket a fraction and watch the surface go from eager to polite. That is the word you use for a mix that behaves. You teach the boy the short spread test along a spare plank. Your trowel sets a dollop. Then you strike it once and watch the circle tremble. If it slumps too far, sand is short. If it stands like pride, water lacks. He tries and nods when the circle sits in that modest middle. You let his grin breathe for one heartbeat. The bedding run reaches its mark and stops a finger shy of the aris. You wipe the blade on the board's edge and find no grit. The noise of tools goes small. Even voices slip low, as if sound itself might jostle the bed. You ease your back and roll your shoulders to keep the knots from setting. A mason from the dressing bench sets a new ashlar near your knee. He does not speak. He touches 2 fingers to the paint mark, then to the tally board, then to the bed. Agreement runs in 3 small moves. You nod and look once at the plum where it watches you without comment. Lime speckles your cuffs and dries to a ghost bloom. You brush it without hurry, under the bloom. Cloth shows the same old stains you carry from job to job. They do not wash out. They do not need to. They are the map of how you learned. You glance toward the brazier and feel a warm push at your shins. Near the brazier, heat lifts from the coals and steadies the air. The glow sits low and constant, kind under the boards. The pulley block drifts past the brazier where coals breathe low and the wheel takes weight. Iron kisses iron at the hook. Leather rubs a warning whisper against the ashlar's corner pad. Your forefinger tests the shackle pin. It sits proud by a fingernail, exactly where you left it after the dry run. Signals ride your arms instead of your mouth. Palm high, a slow circle, then a cut across the body for check. Feet in the cage find their cadence. Slats thud, the drum hums, tailmen lean back as one body. The full line tightens and hums a narrow note. Stone answers with a small float that makes every shoulder rise and then decide to relax. Wind tries a thin hand through the hoarding and plucks the line. The block sways a thumb to the west. A boy inhales too sharply. Your head turns once and he swallows the sound. The ashlar hangs obedient as a trained ox, heavy and patient, interested only in gravity in your hands. A breath later. The swing grows. It is not much. It looks like a polite bow. Your wrist lifts and shows 2 fingers ease. The wheel slows without complaint. The tailmen feel the slack and pay. The arc softens. A knee finds a brace. A palm slides along grain to the ledger's edge. The block centers again over the bed. The bed shines with a quiet sheen where your trowel finished the pass. The south edge carries that extra body you planned. The chalk stripe shows where to stop the spread. The plumb bob hangs over your notch like a little star that refuses drama. You lift your eyes to it and let your jaw unclench. A wheelman in the cage watches the horizon and not his feet. Good. You flick 2 fingers down and his step shortened by a hair. The drum answers with a kinder pace. The hook block rises a thumb. The ashlar follows, dragging a hush out of every throat nearby. Hemp on the head sheaves sings in one narrow key. The hook's throat creaks, then settles. You touch the becket, then let the leather carry its own small story. The sling's bite angles perfectly across the stone's corner pads. Your foreman holds a handspike like a shepherd's staff and waits for your chin to point. Air stirs again. A wider gust slides from the river and climbs the nave. Hoarding boards shiver. The block begins a longer swing. Not wild, not kind. Your palm flattens, halt. Feet stop. The cage stills. Tailsmen clamp hips and knees and live in that necessary strain. The ashlar sails through its arc and returns to centre, because physics likes to be treated with common sense. A wheel will always rise more polite than a wind will fall. That is the comfort. You roll your shoulders and set the next sequence in your bones. Lift 2 palms, raise, steps resume. The block climbs, then pauses in smooth beats. The first course waits with its bed raked, thin and honest, ready to meet the weight without squeeze. A small comb scar glints on the bedding face. Your fingernail touches it and then leaves it be. The comb shows yesterday's patience in the dressing shed. The stone will accept your plan if you keep your own patience today. You step to the bed and spread 2 last ribbons, narrow as reeds, to carry the arises clean. From the choir rail comes the dry hush of men holding their breath in shared ignorance. They think strength lives in loudness. Today, strength hides in tiny checks. A hand on a rope chooses a world. A foot on a rung says yes or no to a swing. You consider how much craft is only refusing to be hurried. A short neutral understanding has grown in this yard. Wheel speed stays steady through signal, not through shouts. Sheaves take tallow before every shift. Tailmen keep their boots from the fall line. A frayed fabric tie holds the chapter minutes where halts for wind are tallied beside payments for new head pins. The lodge reads that page softly when the high frame creaks after a storm. Your foreman steps to the beam end and points at the turning block you might set again if the swing returns. You shake your head. Not yet. The tail can hold this arc without help. Saving a tool for the next hour often saves 2. The ashlar clears the last ledger and floats over the bed. Both hands rise, and the cage slows to a whispering pace. Your body becomes the hinge between gravity and will. The block eases down. The sling breathes. Tailmen feed. The lower arras kisses the mortar and leaves a wet line like a shy signature. A hair of swing remains. You follow it, coaxing the drift with a touch at the hook. The stone turns a finger's breadth. Your jaw ticks, then goes loose. Weight settles across the bed with that small, unmistakable hiss. The sound says welcome. The sound says wait a breath and no longer. Handspikes come in under your chin. You point. One spike nudges the north face. Another brushes the west. The ashlar moves with reluctance and then with relief. Arises meet their neighbours and keep their dignity. The Plumb's point hangs dead over your notch. Your mouth wants to smile and stays professional. You tap the top face with a wooden mallet. 1, 2, 3 on the pattern your father taught you when the tool still felt heavier than your entire arm. The note turns low and even. You do not need to announce that it is good. Men hear it and let their shoulders settle. A boy kneels with a tuck pointer and cleans the ooze where bed meets face. His tongue sticks out by habit. You could laugh, but you do not. The lime pulls into the joint and makes that small curl that only forms when mixture and pressure are right. He wipes it with the swab you gave him last week and does not smear the arris. Gust returns, late to the party, and pushes at the sling. The block cannot hear it now. Weight lives in the wall. The leather frets against the slack and then hangs loose. You strip the pin with 2 fingers and a thumb. The hook answers with a dry click. The sling slips clear and you feed it back to the boy. He coils it with care that belongs to an older hand. A wheelman calls with his eyes to ask if he should stay in the cage. You let your wrist tilt. Stay. Work likes rhythm more than pause. If a second lift climbs soon, no one will have to remember how to breathe on the rungs. He nods and watches the horizon again. You run a straight edge along the face. No light shows. A strip of stone dust falls and clings to your cuff. You brush it off and put your knuckles against the arris. Cool, calm. The joint has the quiet of bread settling after it leaves an oven. You like that thought and let it go so it does not become a habit. Wheel hum deepens while the tail crew takes up slack for the next stone. Your foreman checks the head with his palm. Tallow sits where it should, pins it home. Something like contentment tries to live in the yard. You tolerate it for a heartbeat and then send it away because complacency enjoys timing. From below, a barge shout drifts up and breaks into syllables in the nave. The sound sets 3 sparrows flying through the opening in the hoarding. They tilt, flare, and vanish toward the transept roof. Men who saw them pretend they did not. You lean your weight into a ledger, then shift back and feel how the frame answers. A gentle give, no slop. The kind of answer that says it can take another hour like this without complaint. Your palm relaxes on the rail. A breath you did not plan escapes, honest and thankful. The boy stands near the plumb and waits. He does not fidget. He does not breathe loud. He looks at your face and then at the line and then at the bed. You nod and let him lower the point to check the next landing. He centers it without sway. His mouth does not move. He will sleep hard tonight. A dull thud from the wheel tells you the cage wants a decision. You raise your arm and give it the soft circle that means prepare to rise. Then point to the new ashlar on the trolley. Men roll it under the beam. The rock complains in its old tongue against wood. It will sing a better line when it sits in the wall. You wipe sweat with the back of your wrist and feel grit make a tiny rasp. It is the kind of rasp that reminds you a day is honest. Your hand lowers to the rail. The rail feels like something that remembers more than men do. You rest your palm to the oak scaffolding and feel the rough grain settle your breath. The windlass drum waits with the brake bar set, a mute promise on the oak frame. Teeth on the ratchet show bright where palms have polished them clean. A thin smear of tallow sits under the pawl, quiet and obedient. Tailmen glance up to it and then away. As if to a weather sign, they will not jinx by staring. Your hands measure the bar's reach and the post's bite. Fingers slide under the strap ring and check for any give that is not your own. Knuckles test the bolts. The grain answers with that small, living creak you like. You lean a shoulder to the upright, then to the ledger, and feel the frame say it can hold a decision. Oak scaffolding breathes as wedges ease under mallet taps. Braces that have guarded your course tilt in their sockets and loosen. Pins whisper as they back out. Dust drifts along the ledgers like flour on a board. The yard quiets. Men know the hour when caution must step aside so the work can show itself. A simple fear walks a small circle in your ribs. Shoring is comfort dressed as timber. Taking it out draws a line you cannot pretend is far away. You picture the new courses, still green in their unions, meeting the old spine of the wall. You picture wind sliding from the river and testing your name with chilly fingers. The foreman stands at the windlass and waits for your chin. 2 boys brace a laddered stage near the north face. A journeyman sets a handspike under a bracehead and looks to you. Your palm lifts. Now. The first wedge drops with a wooden sigh. The brace settles loose. Arms take the weight in short bursts while the pin walks free. Rouen sends a cart rumble through the nave, and the boards answer with faint tremors. You make the boys climb down and stand clear while the next brace loosens. The wheel cage is empty. No one walks its slats now. A little steam curls from the brazier and marks time you do not need. Your mouth tastes lime when you swallow. When braces come off, entries cluster in the Episcopal Register about cracked pins and mended ties. The truth in that line keeps your hands slow. You crouch and put a palm across one ledger and feel pressure spread the way it should. The tower wants to stand on its own feet. You invite it to do so, but you do not flatter it with hurry. A chipped wedge refuses to move. You set the claw under it and draw a line in your head if it will not come kindly. It can live here one more day. The mallet's face touches it once. The wedge sighs and yields. A boy carries it to the rail like a fallen knight and sets it by the tally board with a small, solemn nod. Dust shakes from a brace when its pin slides free. The air tastes like old bark and stone. You rotate your wrist and pull the timber clear with 2 men on the tail. The absence leaves a bright scar on the post where sun has never touched until now. You let that scar teach your eye about load lines that will change today. They pull shoring in stages when courses have taken and beds are true. Wheel stays idle. Lines hang slack. Ledgers feel for the new verse the wall sings without its crutches. Chapter accounts list iron for new dogs when a brace bruises an arris in the stripping. No one likes that line. It puts a number on haste. A splintered wedge above the lodge door is said to sour wheel luck if touched on a stripping day. Set the chapter step and point to the entry. The superstition gives the boys a place to hang their nerves. You allow the story to live as long as hands do not wander to that relic. Ledgers tremble once as a brace leaves and then calm. You listen with your teeth set lightly, so the tiny changes travel up your jaw. The plumb bob you hung on the north side answers with the smallest of swings, then returns. Lines in your head redraw themselves in good news. They take 3 braces free, then stop by rule. Nothing else moves for a count of 60. You walk the circumference of the tower and let fingertips graze joints that were strangers last week. Mortar faces show the same clean quiver where the weight gathers and rests. The foreman follows your eyes and reads the same page. Chapter minutes record braces pulled, windlass drum braked, and choir rail kept clear. Lift the windlass drum brake and test the bar against the pawl. The click is clean, the set positive. You lower the bar and let it lie across the drum where men can reach it fast without chasing. The brakeman rubs his palms and pretends the friction belongs to the wood. He knows the hour as well as you. Boys pass handspikes up the ladders. Journeymen shoulder braces down to the yard and stack them by size. Faces outward so any crush will show. The stack becomes a quiet crowd watching the wall. You stop by a scar where an old brace once chewed a ledger. Your thumb reads the ripple. You remember the gust that made it and the oath you did not say because a cannon stood closer than you knew. The lesson still lives in that wood. Lessons that live in wood do not leave a man easily. From the nave, a muffled cough lifts and dies. A kitchen woman appears at the vestry door and sets a pail near the brazier. She does not speak. She looks at the gaps where braces used to stand and nods once. Even people who do not know tools can smell the moment when a job steps past maybe. You return to the plumb and let the bob settle. The point drifts a hair, then centres over your notch. Your chest eases. You place your palm flat on the ashlar you set in the last lift. It does not tremble. Your fingertips hear only their own pulse. The wall has found its cadence. A gust sweeps the hoarding and slaps a hanging chip into motion. It dances and falls. Men watch it strike the floor and grin with foolish relief. You let them. Relief will keep hands honest for the next hour. Fear would make them clever when cleverness is a liar around stone. The foreman raises his brows. You nod. 2 more braces go under handspikes. Pins twitch and withdraw. One timber resists, then slithers free. You and 2 men carry it to the pile. The weight drags at your elbows and makes your forearms hard. You enjoy that argument. It ends with a joint decision and a quiet thud. A short, plain routine follows. Check the plumb. Sight the straight edge across 2 faces. Tap the arris and listen for a sulk that would mean a bruise. Nothing sulks. The drum sits with its brake set. The tail line coils square. The wheel cage stands still like a beast that could rouse if called. Your back finds the rail and rests there while your eyes travel. The city's noise sits low under the hoarding. A distant shout peels apart and vanishes. The choir's floor is empty of gawkers. A canon stands by the chapter step and pretends he's not counting how long you spend standing still. You ignore him. A boy touches the old tally board where you chalk the star for the bell frame's course. He asks if the star still matters. You tell him it matters more now, without braces. The frame later will ride on a wall that knows its own mind. He nods, as if that were the same as a blessing. Your hand lifts once more to the drum. Metal is cool under your knuckles. The pawl teeth show no bite marks that do not belong. The bar will hold if the wheel must catch a slip in the next lift. The knowledge does not make you reckless. It lets you breathe. You walk the new bright rind left by a stripped brace and blow dust from a pinhole. A tiny eddy rises and disappears. Your foreman smiles with half his mouth and glances at the plumb. He sees the calm there. He lets his shoulders drop. At evening, the bell tone carries across the close and steadies tired hands. Oil lamp wick shivers as the bell tone fades along the close. Flame beads, steadies, then leans toward the gap in the hoarding. You cup the little lamp with your hand and guide its glow along the rail so the boys can see the chalk. Smoke tastes faintly of bruised seed. The city below quiets by degrees until only carts far off complain. Your fingers pinch the wick up and trim its char with a nail. The bead brightens to a small, loyal sun. You set the lamp in a crook of timber where it will not kick free. A second lamp waits near the plumb, its saucer ringed with a dark halo from earlier lifts. You draw breath and let your shoulders fall. Evening cool walks the boards and finds every gap. Drafts nose at the hoarding seams. The wheel cage creaks once when men climb back to their rungs. You tap the drum and the brake comes off with a quiet click that feels louder at night. Shadows turn edges into tricks. You point to the painted numerals and watch the boys nod. A thought you do not voice runs under your work. Dusk punishes carelessness because it is too kind to shout. You refuse to be hurried, even when a canon lingers at the chapter step and pretends he's admiring the choir rail. The lamp answers with a steady gleam when you move your sleeve to shelter it. The chalk line across the bed ghosts under the lamp's reach. You stripe a fresh mark with the snap, then dust the excess from the arras with the back of your knuckles. Grain, grit, and a wet hush from the mortar meet in a familiar truce. The bed shows that soft skin it only wears when thickness is right. A tailman looks at you for rhythm, not for words. You give the circle that means rise, then the flat that means wait. Steps in the cage answer with a slower cadence than noons. Slats thud like muffled drums. The fall line tightens. Hemp runs over the head sheave with a silky rasp that starts to sound like a lullaby if you let it. On a ledge near the beam, the tallow candle you kept for reference throws a steadier cone than the oil lamps beside it. You do not chase metaphors about small suns or ships at night. You think instead about where shadows will lie on the next bed and how to keep fingers away from them. The arises will not forgive a smear. A brief, plain pattern guides work after dusk. Lamps sit low, wicks trimmed short. Wheelmen hold a half pace. Tailmen call nothing with their mouths and tell everything with shoulders. Plumbs check more often because lines lie in darkness. Beds want a hair more body when air cools. If a draught hunts along the rail, boys shelter the flame with a hand and minds stay slow. Neighbours mutter that a lamp bracket under the choir rail calms wicks when drafts creep from the nave. Press the choir rail with your thumb and feel the wood's cool curve answer your skin. You kneel to butter the south edge of the next bed as planned from daylight. A narrow tongue slides under your trowel and lays down quietly. Your palm tests, then lifts. The lamp glow colours mortar with warm honey for a beat and then steps back. It is enough. You set the trowel aside and gesture for the sling. Leather sighs against the ashlar's corner pads. The hook pin gleams like a tooth in the lamp. The boy crooks an elbow and pays tail without looping his wrist. He has learned where night steals depth. You glance at the head, See the pince at home and put your knuckle to the becket by force of habit. It speaks the same small yes as noon. Wind tests the seam and finds your sleeve. The lamp flicks but holds. You lift your arm. Steps begin. The ashlar floats a thumb into the dark where edges lose their courage. You follow with the lamp, cupping it against the draught. Plumb point and chalk stripe find each other like old friends who need no ceremony. Weight comes down without a sulk. Handspikes lean in from either side. A nudge to north, a kiss to west. The joint drinks and settles. You tap the top face with a wooden mallet. The note is low and even. Men in the cage grin because some sounds taste like bread, whether at noon or at night. A small framing note runs through the lodge when days shorten. Crews extend lifts after dusk only when wages press and beds are kindly. Lamp duty rotates. Tailmen change to keep legs from cramping on unseen knots. Chapter. Register notes fresh tallow for wicks and a cracked ashlar pin. Press the chapter step and feel a dry grit in the groove as you lean to read the next mark. You return to the bed and wipe a shy ooze from the joint with a swab. The boy reaches for the plum and waits. You let him check. The point hangs over your notch and steadies. He exhales as if that were his job. Maybe it is tonight. You tilt your wrist to tell the cage to stay ready. Lamps make fools of shadows. A brace throws a false edge where there is only air. You move the lamp an inch and the lie dissolves. Your foreman scratches his jaw where a scar seldom itches except in weather like this. He watches your hand instead of the flame. Men learn the light by watching the one who moves it. Hemp dries and tightens in the cooler air. You test the lay with a finger and feel it buzz under your skin. The head sheave sings a brighter note at night. It is not warning. It is simple music that tools make when asked gently. You do not smile. You let your mouth rest. A canvas screen hangs from 2 pegs to shelter a lamp when the wind grows hungry. You lift it with a hand and it sighs back down. The lamplight grows soft around the bed and makes the Plumb's thread look like a line of smoke that forgot to move. You blink grit from your lashes and name 3 stones that will climb before full dark. Then keep the number quiet, from the nave. A cough bounces up and dies. Somewhere beyond the close, a cartwheel finds a stone and complains in an old voice. You prefer the wheel's voice you can command. Your palm rides the head of the mallet as if it were a tame animal. You do not pet it, you guide. The next ashlar noses into the sling with a familiar weight. You set the lamp by the beam where it throws a chapel of light over the becket. Men know where to put their hands when the glow draws a small map on oak. The cage rises. Steps keep half time. Your left shoulder takes the draught. Your right hand holds the lamp steady. The stone obeys. You clean a smear with a tuck pointer and think about the star you chalked on the tally board for the bell frame. Night has a way of making promises feel closer. The wall feels it, too. It no longer steals weight from the stripped braces. It takes it and keeps it. Rouen breathes under you, slower now. Hearth smoke drifts thin through the square. The kitchens have gone to low embers. The boy's eyelids drop and then snap open at your smallest motion. You give the circle with a wrist. The cage answers at once. Habit saves more strength than hunger. You pass the lamp to the boy so he can learn how a hand casts shade without hiding the mark it must show. He steadies, then slides the flame along the plum so the thread glows. He hides a grin in his shoulder. You nod, just once, and that nod is a coin he'll spend on the next lift. A last check runs along the face with the straight edge. No light shows under its belly. Your knuckle taps the arris and listens. Stone answers with temper held and work accepted. You rub an ache from your forearm and feel the familiar buzz inside muscle. The one that tells you fatigue will stay polite for one more course. Under the hoarding, stone dust hangs in the air and waits where footsteps fade. Wooden mallet rises through dust under the hoarding and squares a first. Gentle blow, the head lands true on the top face. No skitter, no vanity. A second tap answers, then a third, spaced like footsteps on a slow stair. Sound carries to the choir stalls where canons wait with folded hands and round eyes. You do not perform. You steady. Your wrist loosens and then firms. Knuckles register the firmness in the handle grain, a calm, oiled rasp. The mallet's beach head kisses the ashlar again and the note turns low. A nudge from a handspike brings the north face home by a finger's breadth. You touch the arris. It keeps its pride without cutting your skin. From the stalls, cloth rustles, a soft tide that rises and falls with each tap. Townsfolk lean into the rail as if it might carry them higher. The wheel cage waits, empty for a moment to make room for show and tell without words. One boy kneels with the tuck pointer ready. Another stands by the plumb, thread shivering, eyes stern. A quiet lesson holds work, speaks cleanly when blows are squared. Noise brags, tone tells. You keep the pattern your father taught. One tap to settle, one to wake the bed, one to close. The wooden head never strikes the same place twice in anger. It coaxes. It does not bully. Ashlar ends breathe small ooze where mortar meets face. The boy wipes the curl with his swab and keeps the arris unmarked. Your foreman raises the straight edge and you slide it along the course. No light shows. The mallet answers with 2 final strokes that make the wheelmen grin though their feet rest on nothing. A cannon clears his throat and looks down his nose at the handspikes. You pretend you did not see him, and you speak to the stone instead. The mallet head turns a half circle in your palm and lands with the weight of a promise kept. Even stones act shy under an audience. Though they pretend they are above such things, they keep order when crowds gather. Boys carry tools to and from the bench in quiet loops. Wheel stays braked if watchers press too near. When feast days crowd the nave, town books list payments for extra wardens along the choir rail. The lodge chalks small arrows on the hoarding so visitors do not drift into the full line. On the margin of the chapter minutes, a clerk marks unruly stalls and ungreased sheaves. Point along the choir rail and chalk a short line. Your hand returns to the mallet. The handle warms where your palm sits. You lift and let gravity add its word. The top face of the new ashlar answers with a right muffled thud, the sound of a loaf that wants slicing, a handspike to the west, a breath held. The joint closes with a hush. Rouen's evening threads through the nave in a tangle of low voices and a cart's late complaint. The hoarding stops the breeze and traps a small world of lime, wood, and human breath. You do not hurry. People who stand at height for the first time always accuse patience of vanity. You forgive them and keep your rhythm. Straight edge glides again. The boy at the plumb peers and sees the point hover just over your notch. He says nothing. His shoulders drop as if someone took a small brick from his back. Across the rail, a townsman pantomimes your 3 taps on the back of his own hand. He smiles when the third imaginary blow seems to settle him. The mallet's face shows a shallow bruise from long days. You turn that bruise away so the clean pad meets stone. The habit carries more memory than you will ever fit into a speech. Tap, tap, tap. Your foreman moves his mouth and names each blow under his breath, a superstition he pretends not to have. A small flaw peeks from an arris further along the course. Not danger, not nothing. You point and the handspikes shift. The mallet lands quick and light, tightening the face against its neighbour so the blemish hides in a kindly shade. You can feel the stall's attention sharpen, the same way birds freeze when a cat flicks its tail. Bodies below form a braided line of hats, hoods, and bare heads. The kitchen woman stands again by the vestry door with a pail and a towel, smiling at the way men obey wood like well-trained dogs. You raise an eyebrow at the wheel cage. 2 men climb, step by step, until their hands rest on rungs and their eyes on your wrist. A third course check runs like a catechism. Plumb steadies, straight edge kisses, mallet confirms. Tailmen pull slack through their hands and study grain the way readers study a leaf they love. The ashlar that was shy a moment ago stands braver now with neighbours snug against it on both sides. You glance to the choir rail and see a cannon with a ledger clerk's chin counting blows as if strokes could be priced. Your grin would be a sin, so you swallow it. The mallet's sound dips once more and you accept its verdict. The bed holds temper. The joint tells you it intends to grow old here. A steady routine governs these hours under eyes. Musters do not change tools to flatter a crowd. Crews say flourishes for the bench, never the wall. Plumbs and straightedges ride higher when cannons stand near the chapter step. If a man talks, he talks to a stone or a rope, not at a face over the rail. The boy at the tuck pointer hesitates at a bead that wants smoothing. Your chin shifts. He lifts the swab and draws it once, light as a moth's wing. The curl vanishes, his throat bobs. You pretend you missed the little miracle, then break your own rule and let your knuckles nudge his shoulder once. He will hold that nudge like a coin in his pocket. Wheel hum returns as the cage rolls. Slats answer with breathy thuds. Tailmen lean back in a curve that you could hang laundry on. The mallet rests against your thigh, then rises as if it contains a spring. Tap, tap, settle. The tone drops into that safe space where men smile without showing teeth. A man in a brown cap asks, with his eyebrows only, whether the tower leans. You tilt your face toward the plumb where the point hangs like a bead caught in still water. He watches until the answer slows his heartbeat. You nod once, a blessing disguised as agreement. From the stalls, a boy too young to be up here mimics your hand signals with shy grace. A cannon catches him and pushes his fingers down with a gentle tap. The cannon's mouth holds a laugh he does not let out. Even the fussy learn when they must. Lead shifts as wheel speed changes, then steadies when your palm makes its lazy circle. The mallet tests one last block before you let the cage take another. The sound is good enough to serve at supper. You set the tool head down for a breath and flex your fingers until tendons sing a tiny hymn. Dust lifts under your boot when you step to the rail. The city's lamps begin to stitch their small beads along streets you cannot see from here. You look instead at the face you made today, at the tempered rhythm that kept eyes from growing bold. The tower accepts attention now, it does not flinch from it. Foremen and wheelmen share one long, quiet glance with you. It contains work done and work prepared, and the comfortable distance to go between. The mallet hangs from your fingers once more. Its weight is the sort that reminds you to eat, not the sort that scolds. You gesture to the boy to pass the plumb for the next check. He does, holding the thread clear of the bed. He has learned to breathe through his nose so his mouth does not wobble the line. He will teach that trick to another boy when this wall climbs out of his reach. You rest the mallet on the ledger and let your thumb ride the smooth handle as if it were the spine of a favoured book. You never say you like this, but bones tell on you when the note of a set joint surprises your ribs into loosening. Some joys resist words even when an audience waits. You steady your gaze on the point and let the rail cool your forearms. The next lift will prove the calm is not an accident. That thought pleases you more than any head in a stall. You steady the plumb bob until the thread stops trembling and listen for the tick. The bob touches the board with a dry, sure sound that settles men as if by command. The leather sling answers the plumb's last tick with a dry creak as you test the becket. The corner pad sits square on the ashlar, but a faint fret shows along one seam. Your thumb finds the warm spot where leather has rubbed itself thinner than it should. You draw breath through your nose and taste old oil. The wheel cage waits, but your palm stays flat. A small rub becomes a torn word if you pretend not to hear it. You lift the hook, then lower it to give slack. The block settles with a sulky sigh. A tailman shifts his feet and keeps the fall line tidy. You point him off the dusted plank where grit would court a slip. Your foreman brings the awl pouch and a strip of spare hide. He has read your face. You slide the awl's tip through a stitch hole to test the seam. Fibres whisper. The hole opens too easily. That seam has eaten wind and grit for longer than you like to admit. You run your finger along the strap and count creases like rings in a felled tree. Near the beam, the head sheave sits clean and true. The rope sleigh shows no strand lifting its pride. The trouble lives here, in leather that forgot to be patient. You chalk a small cross on the strap where fretting shows brightest. The boy looks at it as if you'd marked a forehead. Cribbing will keep dignity while you tend the sling. You signal for two short timbers. Men bring them to the rail. You set one under the ashlar's belly, coaxing the block with a handspike until weight finds wood. The second crib kisses the opposite arris. The stone rests, lifted by the humblest of squares, and you feel your ribs loosen. They change fastenings by settled habit. Load must sit on crib before straps leave hooks. Hooks must sit quiet before hands touch pins. Boys keep faces clear of gaps and fingers clear of pride. When slings wrinkle or sing too much, entries in chapter minutes mark straps withdrawn and new buckles bought at the fair. A buckled strap lies on the chapter register table when they list slings withdrawn for frayed seams. You press the stall latch with your shoulder and reach for a new strap in the chest. The hide smells fat and old. Your foreman passes the punch, and you set new holes to match the Beckett's mind. The tool bites and spits neat crescents that fall like fingernails. The boy gathers them from the plank and pockets two, as boys do. Riggers quietly claim a dab of wool grease on the stitch line quiets fret where rope and hide share weather. Set the Beckett and lash the stitch line tight. The old strap comes off the hook with a reluctant cough. You steady the pin and turn it with 2 fingers against the load that the crib now holds. No rush, no bravado, only the simple arithmetic of safe work. The pin slips, the Beckett yawns, and the leather walks free into your hand. Your foreman inspects the hook's throat while you thread the new strap. Iron shows clean where it rubs. He scratches at nothing with his thumb and nods. A superstition that says we have caught this early. You do not smile. You wait for the next test to write the verdict. A short, plain system holds for swaps at height. One voice commands, hands repeat, crib sits square. Pins face away from the fall line. Wheel stays braked unless the master calls creep. Consistory Act books note careful changes when feast days press crews past dusk, and they praise the jobs that sleep unremarked. You fit the new leather through the Beckett and draw it snug. The punch marks you set meet the pin without fight. The Beckett seats, the strap lies flat. Your knuckles ride the grain to feel for any proud seam that would scold you later. Nothing scolds. You breathe. The awl tests the old seam again out of habit. The whole surrenders. You hand the spent strap to the boy. He will cut it into corner pads for smaller stones. Waste becomes help if you keep your eyes open. He nods with a seriousness that would make you laugh on another day. You look to the head. The rope hums where the cage sways with the men just shifting feet. They do not hurry you. They look at your wrists, not your mouth. You show the circle for creep and the wheel turns a gentle thumb. The hook rises until leather lifts clear of the crib by a breath. The strap takes weight without a murmur. That is the answer you needed. Still, the seam fret taught you something else today. You call for a short turn around the hook to spread bite. The foreman loops the tail and makes the lay share itself. The new geometry takes tension like a polite guest, not a thief. You crouch and set small wedges against the crib's corners so the square cannot walk. Your palm rises the ashlar's face and feels the beds cool through the day's thin heat. The new strap lies smooth. The old ghost of fret lives only in your chalk cross, now pale under dust. A kitchen woman appears at the vestry door again, sees the crib, and shakes her head with mock severity. She points her chin at the strap and then at your face. You raise one eyebrow. She laughs without sound and leaves the bucket near the brazier. You will drink when this block sits in the wall and not a breath sooner. Wheels turn on the ground while you count heartbeats. The cage holds its slow pace. The fall line sits with a modest twist so the strap will not chew the same edge twice. You watch the lay and make your arm find the patient rhythm that follows craft like a shadow. From the stalls, only 2 heads remain. Their owners have decided that quiet work is not a spectacle. That pleases you. Spectacle punishes the hand, quiet helps it. You point, and the cage stops. The block eases down to kiss the crib again. You test the strap a final time with an ungloved finger. Smooth, willing. A brief routine follows these swaps in the lodge. Old leather becomes pads. Pins receive a light stone of polish. New straps earn a thin coat of grease and a stamped mark so the register can track their lives. If a strap fails, the page notes wind, grit, and hour, and the master writes the last line with a flat mouth. You set the sling around the ashlar and lift clear of the crib. The blocks groan in a friendly way. The head sheave sings its narrow note. Tailmen lean, the strap bears evenly, the crib slides away like a stool politely withdrawn from a table. You touch the becket and feel nothing ask for help. Handspikes slip under your elbows, a nudge to north, a kiss to west. The bed takes weight where it should. Mortar breathes, then swallows. You tap the top face with a wooden mallet and hear the low-loaf note. It is not in your head. Men nearby nod without looking at one another. You strip the pin and free the strap as soon as the joint proves itself. The new leather slides without complaint. The tail coils in the boy's hands, neat and square. He holds his wrists correct, proud without being foolish. You mark the chalk cross on the old strap and drop it in the chest to be reborn as pads by morning. A last glance runs from head to hook, clean, calm, ready for the next lift. You rest your forearms on the rail and let the grain cool your skin. The fret you caught will not return today. That small victory will hide on the page and in the wall. That is where victories belong. By the rail, an iron cramp glints near the course edge and holds the gaze a moment. Its dull gleam steadies your eyes and shrinks the night's tricks. Hemp rope hardens under your palm as wind pushes along the frame. Strands tighten and sing. A half turn around the hook steadies the bite. At the rail, the iron cramp you noticed earlier holds its dull gleam like a watchful eye. You taste grit between teeth. The wheel cage creaks as feet shift and then go still at your flat hand. Your shoulders square. Elbows lock to the ledger. Breath shortens to polite sips. 2 fingers rise for creep, then flatten to nothing as the gust snaps the hoarding like a sail. You cut your palm across the air. Hold. The brakeman sets the bar and leans. The drum clicks into obedience with a tidy, human sound. Wind from the river finds every seam and makes music of slats. Dust lifts in a pale sheet and drifts toward the nave. A straw thread skitters and vanishes over the choir rail. The ashlar in the sling begins a patient, unhelpful swing. The rope sleigh grinds in the sheave and then settles to a brighter note you do not like. A quick count settles in your skull. Anchor, lash, shelter. You point the tail crew to the cart rail you set for belaying last week. One man drops the line around the rail and takes a half hitch that will hold without gnawing. Another kneels and clears grit from under his heel. As trained, you raise one finger. Creep. The cage gives an inch. The arc shrinks. The plumb bob dances, then calms over your notch. You ignore the first calm because it lies. You wait for the second calm. The one that shows wind has had its little say and gone off to bother some other poor fool. The ashlar's corner pad frets against leather and then remembers patience. Musters suspend rises when the height starts to behave like a harbour mouth in squall season. Ropes pay out under control rather than freeze in panic. When gusts rise off the river, entries thin across the consistory act book. You set your hand on the drum spoke and feel the pause as a useful tool, not a delay. A wheelman lifts his head and waits for you to decide if the day continues or ends. The boy at the Plumb pinches the thread so hard his nail beds whiten. You soften your mouth and let your arm turn a slow circle. The wheel answers with a polite rumble. The line takes back tension like a cat reclaiming a cushion. At the chapter step, wardens maintain a small tallow bowl kept lit near the rail steadies ropes when wind plays tricks. Press the chapter step with your thumb as you pass and nod toward the bowl without looking fussy. Your foreman moves to the beam end and plants boots wide. He points at the turning block. You give him the little wave that means not yet. Another gust tests the gap and rattles the laddered stage. You feel the tremor through the ledger and into your ribs. The feeling is not fear. It is arithmetic written on your body. Hemp tightens again. You see the lay twist, then settle. Your thumb checks the becket and finds nothing proud. The hook shows clean. The strap you changed in the last hour sits smooth and faithful. The crib timbers you used then rest in a neat pile like retired soldiers. You promise them they will not be called back today. A short framing note lives in the lodge for wind days. Wheelmen change pairs often to keep legs fresh. Tailmen work 2 and 2 on a belay rather than 3 on a wild line. Straight edges check faces after any lift that lasts through a gust. Chapter minutes list, halted hours without scold if pins are checked and no joints are bruised. You let the cage climb a thumb and then stop it with 2 soft beats of your palm. The ashlar floats, then drifts back, less bold now. You follow its apology with a handspike and coax the lower arrows into line over the bed. The trowel waits where you left it. Blade clean, you whisper the plan to your wrist. Touch, welcome, set. The head sheave changes voice when wind falls off the eaves. It drops from bright to near silent. Your jaw loosens. The boy lifts the plumb, resets, and lets the point kiss wood. The tick is small and dry and beautiful. You allow one short line of voice to live. Hold. The brakeman eases the bar. The drum pays a breath. Mortar shows its soft skin as weight comes down. The sling sighs. A handspike nudges west. Another strokes north. The joint closes with the careful hush that carries through bone better than through air. A stray curl of lime peeps from the face. The boy's tuck pointer lifts and smooths it into its home. His hand trembles and then steadies when your forearm steadies. You would like to clap your palm to the rail and shout, but that is a young habit. You nod instead. The nod reaches him anyway. Wind shoulders the hoarding one last time and then sulks away down the nave. The rope falls quiet in the sheave. The cage's slats stop complaining. The world returns to work. You feel your sternum lighten as if a hand let go. Your foreman rolls the story pole in his palms. He asks with eyebrows if this lift should count. You tap the tally board with the back of your knuckles. The ashlar earned its number. A thin smile peels the corner of his mouth and then closes. Numbers love calm. Below. Rouen shifts from afternoon to the edge of evening. The square's noise becomes less argument and more murmur. Hearth smoke threads its way through gaps and brings meat and onion high to the hoarding, then fades. Your own belly says nothing. Wind quiet makes a man deaf to hunger for a while. You sweep grit from the bed for the next stone and see how the chalk stripe holds where it should. The line has not wandered. The plumb thread lies along its own shadow in a way that pleases you more than praise. You move your feet and the board under them answers in a low, contented creak. The wheelmen trade places, fresh calves, fresh lungs. The tail crew shakes out wrists and then returns to the rail. A kitchen woman peeks from the vestry door, sees the rope sit calm and decides you do not need her bucket yet. Her mercy tastes like water anyway. You reach for the sling and the leather reeds warm under your fingers. The new strap behaves as if it has waited all its life to hang here. Your nail tests the pin. Your knuckle rides the hook throat. The whole assembly says yes in a dozen small ways. A man could write a psalm from those yeses and never use the word pride. Another gust, smaller, rattles the ladder. You don't blush for the turn of your stomach. Men who cannot feel fear have no sense for edges. A handspike waits under your elbow. You do not use it. The ashlar you just set holds itself like a good guest. You rub a thumb along its top face and feel only your own skin. You draw your attention back to the rope. The lay runs clean, not a strand lifted. The head block shows a pin seated deep. Your foreman tests the drum with his weight and judges the brake's bite. Everything reads as it should. Still, you breathe small to keep the heart from teaching the hands to be quick. A boy asks, without sound, if another lift rises before dusk. You tip your chin toward the next stone on the trolley. His eyes widen, then find the line and grow sensible again. Desire is the motor. Line is the governor. You remind your own bones of that rule because nobody graduates from it. The ashlar swings in your memory of the last gust and then swings only in memory. You dial your wrist to the patient circle you like. The wheelmen answer. The line tightens to a useful song. You hear the lower harmony from the drum, then the small answering note from the hook. These are domestic sounds, the kind that make a high place feel like a workshop again. A small chip winks on the ledger near the iron cramp. You pinch it between forefinger and thumb and send it to the pocket of your tunic. You keep such chips without knowing why, then find them months later and remember wind and height, and the way a job can pretend to be a storm and then agree to be work again. You rest your forearms on the rail. Grain presses your skin and tell you the frame still knows your weight and does not mind it. The boy at the Plumb smiles where only you can see. You offer him the tiniest nod he has ever earned. He pockets it as if it were silver. A tallow candle by the rail gives off a faint, clean smell. The iron chisel rides your belt and catches a faint wash from the tallow candle. Edge feels keen when your thumb shivers along it. You do not plan to dress stone with it now. You plan to cut doubt. A stubborn mass waits under the beam, bigger than the last and truer than your appetite for arguing with wind and height. Your foreman looks at the wheel cage, then at you. The men could walk all noon and still the drum might sulk at the last embrace. Where parapet and hoarding pinch swing, space to a stingy slot. Your hand finds the drum spoke. The bar sits ready. The pawl teeth blink their bright, patient grin. You draw breath shallow and decide in your ribs before your mouth can try to be brave. Counterweight helps where calves fail. Your fingers count places to hang ballast around the drum without bruising the lines. 2 baskets will do if packed tight. 3 if you do not like the feel of the spoke. You point to the rubble heap and then to the drum. Men nod. No one tries to say a hero could do without help. You're done with that kind of story. At the rail, the iron cramp holds its dull gleam and remembers you. You touch its shoulder with a knuckle, then step into the small flurry that follows any change to a machine. Tailmen clear space. Wheelmen trade places with fresher legs. The boy runs for straps and returns with leather and rope. Eyes bright, feet careful. Reeving changes first. Your palm guides the free end out, then across the head to double the purchase. The hook block waits for its twin pass and swallows the line with a well-bred hush. The lay keeps smooth. No proud strand rises to scold you. You watch the sheave pins once, twice, and feel them read as clean even before your thumb proves it. A worn reed squeaks over the chapter minutes where they note ballast stones for a slow lift. The line sits between wages due and iron bought for new dogs. The page smells of dust and a little lamp smoke. Baskets arrive and kneel by the spoke. You and the foreman lash them snug to the drum's belly. Rubble thuds into wicker and finds a new shape under lashings. Weight is a companion who needs only respect, never friendship. You push a stone with your boot and feel its seat. The lash gives one groan, then shuts up. They set counterweights when height steals leverage from legs and sheave friction adds its tax. Spokes get pads under lashings. Pins face away from hungry directions. Brakemen keep arms ready to ease rather than catch. If a drum jerks, entries in the consistory act book trace hour, wind, and who gave the sign. Your forearms lift the spoke while the brakeman slips the bar to hold. He reads your breath rather than your mouth. The bar bites. The drum accepts the extra mass with a small, satisfied dip. You step back once and see the new geometry in your bones. It looks like help rather than hope. That is the kind you trust. The ashlar waits in its sling, heavy as a decision you have already made. The corner pads shine where leather kissed them earlier. Your thumb rides the becket. No raised burr, no fret. The strap you swapped an hour ago lies smooth and loyal. The boy at the Plumb lifts the thread and keeps his chest still. His eyes ask a question he does not know how to voice. You answer with a circle of your wrist. Creep. The cage walks. Slats thud their mild drum. The line takes strain and hums, yet the drum does not protest. The baskets rise from the plank and wink rubble edges in the candle glow. The spoke turns past your knuckles like an old dog choosing to get up rather than be dragged. A smile threatens your mouth. It loses. A gust prowls the hoarding and then changes its mind. The ashlar swings a child's hand and grows polite again. Double purchase eats distance, so patience must feed the rest. You count out loud to yourself in a voice no one hears. The boy hears anyway and copies the count under his breath. It steadies him. Your foreman stations a man at the turning block with a quick strap ready in case the arc returns. You shake your head once. The line lies in happy curves and does not want extra furniture. He folds the strap and keeps it ready because that is what sense looks like when it stands beside craft. The parapet lip waits like a judge. The cage numbers the inches to it and the hook follows. The head sheave purrs rather than sings. The new mass on the drum gives the wheelmen the gift of courage that belongs to mechanics, not to hearts. Your arm lifts the pattern of rise and hold you drew a dozen times today. The crew stays inside that pattern as if it were a weather map. Rope lays clean across the drum. Baskets circle, thud softly, and continue. No lurch, no scold. The ashlar reaches the pinch where hoarding, parapet, and the beam end squeeze air thin. Your handspike waits under your elbow. You do not move yet. Movement too early can make a friend into a complaint. A small, plain order holds for this gamble. Masters choose ballast before they choose an extra shout. Wheel speed slows by another quarter to grant forgiveness to small errors. Tailmen watch the twist at the hook. A brakeman watches the becket as fiercely as he watches the pawl. Chapter minutes list counterweight days as unremarked hours when nothing fell. Now, your spike nudges the sling a breath north. The block clears the parapet by 2 fingers. A man at the beam end whispers a prayer you pretend you did not hear. The ashlar noses through the slot, then eases into clean air beyond the pinch. You let your lungs find their full shape and let nobody see that happen. You sweep the bed with your eye and then with your hand. The south edge carries the fuller body you laid in the morning. The chalk stripe holds firm where ooze must stop. Your wrist draws a small arc that means fold and feed. The tail gives. Weight drops a breath. The hook sighs. The lower arris kisses the bed and leaves a wet witness. Handspikes press. North submits. West agrees. Your mallet lands once, twice. 3 times with that same loaf note men learn to trust more than any speech. The joint drinks, then rests. The plumb thread comes to stillness like a shy animal stepping onto familiar earth. The boy's mouth opens, then shuts. He remembers you prefer quiet victories. You test the baskets with a palm on the spoke as the cage relaxes. They rock and then fall into the new stillness their mass created. Lashings hold, pins sit where you set them. You draw the bar up, feel weight offer to run, and set it down again so the brakeman can learn the offer through his bones. He nods, then releases and resets with a care you admire. Below, Rouen smudges into evening. A kitchen woman appears and sets a bucket by the brazier, eyes flicking to your baskets with frank approval. You lift your chin in thanks and keep your hands on the tools rather than on praise. Praise is slippery, tools tell the truth. You mark the tally board with a new course number and a small cross with a parapet pinched. The boy will remember why that cross lives there when he tells a younger boy about this day. The foreman rolls his shoulders and lets a joke die unspoken. Even humour knows when to take off its boots. The drum takes one empty turn and puts the baskets near the plank. You tap a strap, then the spoke, then the pawl. All 3 speak yes in the old language of touch. The crew does not cheer. They tidy the coil and set the handspikes straight on their pegs. That is better than cheering anyway. You stand a breath longer and let the iron chisel rest in your palm. The edge stays bright. There will be dressing to do tomorrow, but not on this problem. This problem sits quiet now inside a wall that has accepted it as one more true thing. Under the small flame, the pulley block hangs steady and clean, its cheeks shining. Men watch its stillness with bright eyes and easy shoulders. Ashlar block waits on the trolley like a held breath. Edges true, face combed, paint mark matching the star you chalked weeks ago. Its mass carries a secret. This one begins the locking course. Your palm rests on its cool skin. The grain of the wooden bed under it answers with a faint rasp when you shift your weight. You nod to the foreman. He knows what this block means without a speech. Your hands set the sling. Leather settles over the corner pads with a dry sigh. The becket takes the hook throat clean and square. Pin sit home. You test the strap with 2 fingers and let the habit run your bones. Breath settles. Shoulders loosen. The wheel cage waits for the small circle of your wrist. Wind lies quiet under the hoarding. Boards press a soft hush over the height, as if the frame itself wants you to hear only tools. Below, Rouen mumbles in ordinary ways again. Smoke climbs steady above roofs and loses interest before it reaches your ledgers. The Plumb thread hangs without a tremor. A simple certainty forms and holds this course, clutches the walls together so they stop acting as cousins and start acting as one body. Your jaw sets. Pride tries to climb into the room and you keep it on the stair. Pride makes hands hurry, the tap that should come second. You give the wheel its small circle. Slats answer with the mild drum you like. The line tightens and hums. The ashlar lifts from the trolley and floats, dignified, through the slot you won yesterday. The head sheaf speaks in that low voice of tools pleased with their treatment. Tailmen feed without glancing at their hands. The bedder head shows a skin you trust, a little more body on the south edge, as planned. The chalk stripe sits tidy, a modest border where ooze must learn manners. The boy holds the plumb and keeps his chest still. The point hovers exactly over the notch you cut when the first brace left. You look once, you accept the answer. Tap with the mallet now would be vanity. You let the stone hover and then ease. Creep, touch, set. A breath of ooze shows, shy and correct. Handspikes coax the north and then the west faces home. The joint closes with a hush that bodies feel before ears do. Your forearm warms with the effort of not celebrating. They give keying courses more checks than any other. Plumbs hang every few feet and a level board rides their backs. Straight edges travel face to face until the eye forgets where one stone ends. When joints go tight all around, entries grow in chapter minutes about iron cramps, bort and bell frame carpentry advance for the next stage. You run the straight edge along the new face and hunt for scandal. No light shows under the belly. Arises meat like old friends. A faint comb line hides where it should. Your jaw relaxes. You lift the mallet and lay the 3 taps your father taught, steady as a catechism. The note rings low and even. Men nearby breathe again. A time comes when through stones matter more than talk. You signal for the long ashlar, the one that will cross the wall's heart and tie brothers who enjoy pretending they could stand alone. The wheel climbs with patience. The strap bears without fret. The boy's eyes track the plumb point the way a cat tracks a moth, deliberate and ready, when the key course beds. Chapter minutes often mark payments for iron cramps and for the carpenters who raise the first bell frame stages. Your thumb rides the becket while the long stone clears the parapet lip. The hook floats over the bed. You ease it down, a breath at a time, until the arras kisses the ooze. Handspikes slide in, gentle as doctor's hands, and persuade the width into its nest. The straight edge sings a quiet yes when you let it travel the face. You do not smile. You let your lungs remember being useful. A small flaw peaks where 2 arises meet. Not danger, a whisper. You lift the iron chisel, not to dress, only to suggest. The tip finds a high moat in the bed you missed by a grain. 2 short, exact taps. The moat vanishes. Mortar returns to still water. Your wrist thanks the lesson. A brief passage of plain order holds in such hours. Wheel slows, tail feeds, nails stay far from belts. Every 4th stone earns a plumb check and a story pole kiss. If a face sulks, it is coaxed, not scolded. The lodge keeps corner pads handy and iron cramps close. But no lead paws until the tally says the course obeys everywhere it must. You send the signal. Next block. The cage walks, the ashlar rises, swings once, changes its mind, and behaves. Wind sits with its elbows off the table for a change. The hoarding whispers instead of rattling. Your foreman counts breaths between your signs and copies your patience into his bones, where it will live long after today. The plumb thread threads the same quiet bead over the notch again. You let your face be boring. Boys learn more from a master's boredom than from his brave speeches. The stone lowers, it sets, the handspike nudges. The mallet confirms. The tuck pointer wipes a shy crescent from the face and does not boast. You walk the curve of the wall and lay a palm on each new joint as if greeting neighbours who have moved in at last. Lime smells clean and a little tart. Stone feels like evening water in a shallow pan. Your fingers find no chatter at arises, no snags, no sulks. Your body stops briefing your fear and returns to its usual understudy attention. The foreman rolls the story pole and taps the notch you marked with a star. He wants the tie that meets the frame later to be perfect now. You lean in and sight along plumb, edge, and shadow. All agree. He nods, then looks away quickly so his relief will not look like hope. From the choir rail, 2 canons peer and pretend to know what this hour is. They do not need to know. They need to write the wages and thank the saints for weather that behaves. A boy in the stalls copies your signal with his hand, then flushes when a canon notices. You keep your face plain. Pride in little things can be the mortar under a life. You call for the through stone you picked at dawn. It bears a chalk cross on its belly from your hand. Leather hugs its corners. The head sheave gives its soft song. The stone floats over the bed as if born to the height. You set it down and feel the wall accept it. The feeling moves up your forearms and into your throat like warm bread. Handspikes move in a practice waltz. North, west, breathe, east. Your mallet lands, patient as rain on a roof. The joint closes all around with that quiet promise you had the nerve to imagine back when braces still crowded the wall. The promise is not words, it is a sound, low and even and final. You walk back to the starting corner and sight along the faces once more. No mischief gleams, no edge sulks. The course reads like a sentence with every comma in its place. Even the wheel cage, empty for a breath, seems to lean in and listen. A kitchen woman arrives again at the vestry door and lifts her chin at the wall as if greeting a newborn who has finally stopped crying. You grant yourself a single, silent laugh inside your cheeks. She sets her bucket by the brazier and slips away before anyone can decide to be formal. You set the straight edge down and let your hands rest on the rail. Grain under your palms carries the day's heat into your skin. The plum rests, string flat against the board. The boy blinks hard to keep from grinning like a fool. You rescue him by giving him a job. He fetches the tally board, and you mark the course number with a small line that means nothing to anyone else but you. Your foreman asks with a look if the iron cramps travel up now or wait. You open your hand in a flat answer. Wait. Let the bed breathe and think. He nods. He likes that you refuse to use new strength as an excuse to hurry. The yard seems taller for a moment, not because the wall has grown, but because the work has decided to keep the height it already owned. You breathe and find your ribs easy. Your hands fall to your sides. The mallet hangs at your thigh like a tired but contented dog. By the wall. Brazier coals glow in a shallow pan and steady your eyes. Oak scaffolding takes the weight as brazier coals lend a low warmth along the boards. Posts breathe under your palms. Pegs show their bright ends where knives pared them clean. The height around you feels less like a ladder and more like a room you have slowly built from air and will. Today, the room earns a spine for the future ring. Your foreman knocks the ledger's shoulder with the wooden mallet and listens. The note comes back sound. 2 carpenters slide a sill across the new course, easing it until grain and stone agree. You press fingers to the sill's edge and feel how the ashlar's calm spreads into oak. The bell frame will stand here, tied to your key course so weight drops true for years you'll never see. An adze bites once and shaves a proud whisker from a post foot. The curl flips and sticks to your sleeve. You leave it there. Small proofs soothe men more than speeches. A post settles onto the sill with a modest thud that reads as consent. You set a knee against it and the carpenter drives a pin home with a beetle. The pin sings dull approval, the post stops shifting, your jaw releases. Wind stays civil. Hoarding boards give only small creaks, like someone turning in sleep. The wheel cage waits empty and obedient while carpenters rule diagonals, and you sight the plumb over each post. The boy follows you with the thread, keeping breath steady as you taught. His eyes work like a cat's eyes, patient and exact. A bored hole waits for iron where an outside strap will bite down to the stone. You stand by while the smith's man carries up a neat pack of cramps, their jaws bright. Each iron is a small promise with teeth. Your foreman smears a whisper of fat on one jaw, as habit, so the first bite will not scuff. The carpenters love and hate iron for the same reason it tells the truth. They raise frames by a plain order when stone invites them. Sills bed on a level course. post blind tenon and pin. Wool plates meet with scarf joints that keep their dignity under load. Irons stitch timber to stone where stress likes to breed arguments. Chapter minutes often list iron bought for frames and one payment to a smith for bent cramps when a careless hand let a jaw meet arris instead of strap. You shoulder the post while the carpenter sets the brace. The mortise accepts the tenon with a sigh you can feel through your boot. He wedges. You lean. The brace turns from limb to bone. The boy's Plumb says the corner holds true. You nod without letting your mouth enjoy it. Pride still waits at the stair, asking to be let in too soon. A frayed fabric tie holds the order, where the chapter minutes list iron straps and 2 oak wall plates for the bell frame. You lift the tie and read the total with a quick glance while the beetle's thud keeps time behind you. Your hand rides the iron cramp as it meets stone. The jaw fits over a lead pad the smith set earlier, in a pocket the mason cut by plan. You keep the bite square and signal the striker with fingers, not voice. 1 blow, kindly. Another, clearer. The strap seats, the stone does not sulk. You press, feeling iron and ashlar become neighbours who will mind their fence for a long time. The wall plate arrives. 4 men to a side. They set it on the post shoulders with a groan that comes from effort, not fear. You check the scarf, lean on the abutment, and watch the housing take a wedge. The carpenter marks it with a race knife. The line shines pale as milk in the calm light. Your foreman taps the wedge home and the joint goes quiet. Silence after a wedge is a kind of music. Rouen drifts below with the hum of a market putting itself away. A barge groans around a bend you cannot see. The smell of river rises, then falls. Up here. The smell that matters is oak sap and warm iron and the clean tartness of lime. All 3 talk to your hands more clearly than a cannon's praise ever did. You step to the next post and put your shoulder against it while the carpenter checks his diagonal. He calls the number with his eyebrows and you give him calm back. The boy brings the plumb. Thread kisses notch. The carpenter's mouth folds into a straight line that means the figure is true. He does not celebrate. He picks up the beetle. Across the frame. The smith's man sets another cramp. Your forearm keeps the strap tight to grain while the striker learns your rhythm. The blow lands with the controlled arrogance good iron demands. It is not violence, it is marriage. Metal and wood sign the book and shake hands with stone beneath. A short, sober pattern governs these hours when timber meets tower. Wheelmen stand down unless called to fetch. Tailmen mind coils away from feet. Straight edges serve carpenters too. Checking plate faces where a bowed stick can teach a future sag. If a cramp skitters, it stops and earns a file stroke rather than a second blow. The lodge smiles on such order. The accounts sleep easy when no arris has a bruise. You climb the rail and ease your hip onto a ledger to sight the frame as a whole. Lines agree like well-bred cousins at supper. The sills run level, the posts read upright. Wall plates kiss their joints without pride. You call for the header that will carry the first bell's test weight months from now. And the carpenter answers with a good-natured grumble that hides a grin. The header comes up in slings and swings through its small arc like a guest who knows the house. Hands lift and guide, not grab. The birdmouth seats over the plate and asks for 2 pins. You pass them. Carpenter taps them until they greet the far cheek. Grain compresses and holds. You forget to breathe for half a heartbeat. Then you remember. Iron straps face the inside corners now. You point where bite will do the least harm and the most good. The smith's man follows your hand. Heat has left the irons long ago. The memory of fire lingers only where colour turns slightly blue near a bend. He laughs at nothing when a jaw fits sweetly. You let him. Crafts have their private jokes. When bellmen come later, they will thank a frame that holds its temper. They will never know tonight's small care. The painted triangle that told a boy where to stand. The pinch of your fingers as you checked a strap's seat. They will feel it as absence, no quiver, no complaint, no whisper of a corner that wants to work loose. You set a peg in your teeth and keep both hands for a brace that needs persuasion. The carpenter's beetle rises and falls. The peg goes home with a muffled cheer that lives under your tongue for a blink. The boy does not see. He stares at the plumb because he knows you will look at him looking at it. A canon watches from the choir rail and tilts his head the way a sparrow listens to rain. He understands none of this and all of it. A wall that holds its song with timber's help is a sermon he can hear without words. He will sign the wages. He will say something pious. You will nod, wash your hands, and sleep. You walk the new frame and lay your palm on each connection. Elm pins feel warm. Oak edges feel blunt where they should. Irons feel cool and pleased with themselves. Every touch makes a little ledger entry in your skin. Every entry says the same thing: the height will keep faith with the work you did below. A spare breath belongs to your old promise. Raise the tower by hand before the feast. Keep the crew paid and whole. Keep your name safe with the chapter. The promise no longer feels like a cliff. It feels like a field with furrows you can see. The frame above you is a kind of harvest. You fetch the story pole and check the notch you starred weeks ago. The header sits where the star promised. The boy looks relieved, as if a fortune teller had guessed his birthday. You keep your face modest. Private jokes have their limits too. The carpenter asks for one last check on the plate. You pass the straight edge. He rides it along grain and hums a tuneless scrap to keep the breath steady. The edge finds nothing to disagree about. He sets it down. You rub your forearm once where effort leaves its hot wire under skin. From the nave, a thin cheer rises when someone finally realizes what the frame means. It fades fast. Embarrassed. That is good. Work likes quiet. You keep your hands on the rail and feel the oak answer your weight with a comfortable indifference. Along the bed, the chalk line lies unbroken, pale and still, asking nothing. Tallow candle lifts a calm glow along the chalk line you left unbroken. Wick beads, then steadies. You set the lamp by the rail where the saucer's rim has a dark halo from long evenings. The chalk stripe sits pale and sure under that glow. Your hand hovers over it for a heartbeat, as if blessing a small truth that helped make a larger one. Your palm warms on the ledger. Grain presses your skin and reminds you where the height ends and the frame begins. Below, Rouen breathes in the grey before dawn. Roofs hold a cool stillness. The wheel cage rests, tail lines coil neat and fat. The boy drowses by the Plumb with his chin on his collarbone. You touch the thread with 2 fingers and it hums once, then falls quiet. A small list waits in your head. Check the clamps at the frame corner. Walk the new plates with a hand on each joint. Free the hook, fold the sling, wipe the becket before it forgets the rub of leather. The sequence feels like closing a familiar book. You do not hurry. You let each page fall back to its place. Your job began in vows to a date and to wages, to safety, and to a wall that would not bully its neighbours. The date sits near now. The wages are counted in a little sack against your ribs where a cannon put them, heavy as a loaf and twice as welcome. Hands around you are uncut beyond the day's small scrapes that only make soap sting for a blink. You test the iron straps along the post where the bell frame's first timber bites. Fingers slide under the jaw and feel no proud edge. The carpenter yawns and hides it behind his fist, then rolls his shoulders and laughs silently. You nod and move on, letting your knuckles write a quiet ledger on wood and iron. A short, spare passage would fit on any page of the lodge's memory today. Masters close a stage with tools returned. Tally board cleared, and chalk wiped only where it misleads. Chapter minutes list coin dispersed from the chapter step. Pins counted in a small heap, and names ticked without cross or scold. The scribe's hand writes straight because the wall does. You step to the brazier and stir the coals with a stick. Heat wraps your shins and softens the bite of air. A kitchen woman slides from the vestry door with a jug and cups in a folded cloth. She sets them down and taps the jug twice with 2 fingers. It smells like something you will like and will not name. You pour for the boy first. His eyes bloom and then go sober again, as if praise were a hot pan to hold with care. In clear dawn air, some maintain the choir rail sweetens the bell tone so it carries over slate and lime dust. Press the choir rail with your palm and feel its cool curve settle your pulse. You walk the wall once more and let each new joint answer your touch. The key course holds its quiet promise. The through-stone you chose at first light yesterday lies like a bar of calm through the heart. Your mallet rests head down by the bed as if it understands that today it is only a witness. The boy eyes it and smiles with his mouth shut, which is new for him and good. Your foreman lifts the story pole and touches the starred notch with his thumb. He does not need your eyes this time, yet he finds them and holds them for a breath. The header sits where the star told it to live. The header agrees to carry a bell you won't hoist. Another crew will mount iron and ring timber. Still, bones know a handoff when it comes clean. Your own bones relax to admit it. You wend past the head to the drum. The baskets you hung yesterday sit empty. Their lash marks faint on the spoke where mass kept pride in order. You rub the spoke with a rag until tallow shines dull and warm. The brake bar lifts and settles clean. The pawl teeth look like little mountains, dignified and exact. You pat the bar with knuckles, a habit that remembers a different day when it mattered to greet a friend. The boy has woken himself with a splash from the bucket. He brings you the plumb as if delivering a child. You take it and hang the thread so the point hovers over your first notch. The tick is soft, almost teasing. The line is everywhere it should be. You realise your shoulders have been a little higher for weeks than they needed to be, and they finally lower. A grey roll of sky leans lighter. The city reaches toward it like a field reaching for sun. A canon appears at the chapter step with a ledger clerk at his elbow, and both carry small smiles that pretend to be ordinary. He counts men by habit. He counts coins by duty. He asks after the frame with his eyebrows. You motion to the posts and plates and let his mouth shape a quiet thank you he does not say. Your hand finds the leather strap you cut down yesterday. You slice pads from it, neat as biscuits, and tuck them into the corner chest for some later job. Waste has a way of becoming future help when a crew is kind to it. The boy watches and pockets one small crescent. He will forget it and find it months from now. And remember this grey edge of morning. The bell rope hangs ready from a test clapper the carpenters fixed. A toy the size of a desk and a promise the size of the square. You do not pull it. You wait. You want the hour to belong to the city, not to your hand. You step to the rail and let the candle glow. Find your fingers so you can see the chalk stripe one last time. The stripe has not wandered. A wall of such small loyalties deserves a bow. Your foreman raises his chin. The carpenter sets a palm to the header. The smith's man wipes his jaw with his sleeve and grins without teeth. The kitchen woman leans from the vestry door with her eyes bright. The boy lifts the plumb for no reason but to keep from bursting. You rest your hand flat on the ledger and breathe. The first peal comes without preamble. It travels through the new frame and into the new courses with a clean strength that tastes like cold water. The sound sets the chalk faintly shivering where it sits on stone. It runs along the choir rail and strolls out over the square. It passes over roofs and barges and market boards. It returns to your chest as a gentler echo, then as a simple calm. Your goal lives inside that calm. The tower has risen by hands and by patience. Wages are counted. Faces still carry their full measure. The chapter will sign their lines. The city will point at the height and, for a week or two, tell visitors they stood under work that behaved well in wind. You do not need more than that. You tip the candle saucer and blow. Smoke threads into the grey and vanishes. The chalk line remains, pale and settled. The frame stands in its new quiet. Men rub palms against tunics and look toward the stair with no hurry. You press both hands to the choir rail and feel it answer as a friendly, indifferent thing. A bell tone wanders the close once more and holds the last note sweetly before it fades. You stand by the rail while air grows warmer by small degrees. Boards hold your weight like a bench built for a long evening, not a high gamble. Stone coolness eases through your fingertips and up your wrists. Down in the square. Doors open with ordinary sounds, and those sounds fold themselves into the hush that follows a task set down. Breath leaves your chest without effort. Shoulders soften. A slow blink clears grit from your lashes. Coals in the brazier settle to a comfortable glow, steady and low, like a friend who does not need to talk to keep you company. The plumb thread hangs where you placed it, quiet as a ribbon on a hook. You walk the frame one last time. touching a post here and a plate there, as if saying goodbye without words. Pins feel blunt and honest under your thumb. Irons feel cool and certain. Mortar shows its dry skin and keeps its place. The story pole leans where you left it, its nicks aligned with what now stands, and that agreement feels kind. A mug sits by the jug with a little warmth left in it. You lift it and take a slow mouthful. Heat spreads down your throat and into your chest, and the taste carries flour and spice and a memory you cannot place. You swallow, then rest your palm on the ledger and notice how the grain remembers your shape. Steps on the stair approach and then stop short, respectful. The boy waits where he can see your face. You nod once, he nods back, satisfied that the quiet means safety. He will carry coils today with an easy pride and later sleep without waking to phantom ropes in his hands. Wynne pauses at the hoarding seam and decides to move on. The city feels closer now, not because you're ready to leave, but because the tower has agreed to hold itself. You look at the ashlar faces near your knee and think of bread cooling on a board. The thought drifts away as if it had only come to be polite. You close your eyes for a moment. Inside the lids, the day draws down into a soft circle of useful details. Chalk sits in its pouch, the mallet leans, head down, beside the bed. The sling coils with no knot to surprise you later. The tally board waits for a single, plain line to mark a stage complete. A bird skims the opening in the hoarding, then chooses the sky. You listen for the frame and hear only a gentle quiet, the kind that invites rest. The candle has gone to a dark wick, a small curl of smoke fading until it is only memory. Nothing presses now, nothing pulls. Hand flat on the rail, you breathe, and the tower feels like a calm room around you. The city rustles at the edges, softened by height. Stone under your palm is cool and sure. You're safe here. The work holds, the morning agrees. You turn your face toward the square and let the warmth meet your cheeks. A bell tone lifts once more, lighter this time, and the sound walks away across roofs until it is almost not sound at all, only comfort travelling slowly into light.